afternoon, UMBC. It is great to be here with you, making the impossible real. The impossible that I'm talking about is the notion that violence in the city of Baltimore could ever change. And homegrown leaders are essential to the progress that we've been seeing. We're currently experiencing historic declines in violence that we've seen continue from 2023 to 2024. And homegrown leaders from our grassroots to our mayor are essential to the progress. So this is a picture of me when I was a student here at UMBC. If you had told me then that I would be doing this, much less leading this work now, I would not have believed you. But UMBC is really the institution that cemented my love for public service and also my commitment to Baltimore. And so I think my curiosity, my stubbornness, probably my city, my mayor had other plans for me, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. So this slide shows Baltimore City homicides by year, from 2012, the year that I graduated, through where we are year to date in 2024. So you'll see in 2015, there was a large spike in homicides, and our homicide rate stayed pretty constant at above 300 homicides every single year for the next 7 years. Then if you look all the way to the right of this image, you'll see where we are today. Year to date, as of this morning, we've recorded 162 homicides with a little more than 2 months to go until the end of the year. And so making some important progress and progress that we're working really diligently to sustain. Our approach that we've been taking since Mayor Scott assumed office the end of 2020 has been really focused on expanding what we think of when we talk about public safety, recognizing that we have to invest in prevention, in intervention, rehabilitation, and reentry, in addition to traditional approaches that focus on accountability and enforcement. And just to give some context for where we were as a city, how we were approaching this problem up until this administration, we understood public safety as something that police, prisons, and prosecution was really the totality of. We took many zero tolerance policies, taking a broad brush, not targeting our approaches. And we were looking at public safety through a very narrow lens without seeing benefits to our public safety outcomes. And so it was clear that we had an opportunity to really change the notion and get ahead of violence so that we could stop it. So fast forward to 2017, I was in grad school. There's me in the middle with some of my classmates, and then Councilman Scott, who was the chair of the City Council Public Safety Committee. He was a big advocate, as he still is, for treating violence as a disease and using public health strategies to attack it. And so we worked together to develop and look at research about what other cities were doing, what other initiatives and strategies that were rooted in the evidence were out there that Baltimore could learn from and really take to put and make a part of a new public safety approach. And the reason why that comprehensive approach is so important is in part what you can see in this image here. We see the homicide rate, we see that raw number, but every single instance of violence, every single shooting and homicide has a cascading effect. It impacts the children, the bystanders, the family, the loved ones, the community of that one person. And so that's not something that's captured in that homicide total, but really it shows why it is so imperative that we get ahead of the problem. And this was really the crux of our hypothesis when we were working on that research with then Councilman Scott. If we invest in prevention, if we invest in intervention, we believe that we'll start to see sustainable reductions in violence in Baltimore City. And now, 3 years and some change into implementing our strategies, that's exactly what we're doing, and the nation is taking note. In 2023, we ended the year with 262 homicides, which was a 20% decrease from the year prior, and was also the largest single-year decrease we saw since 1970 when this data was first recorded. And so really important progress. I do want to say before I move further here something really important, which is that one life lost to violence is one too many. This is not a celebratory talk. It's important that we take stock of the progress that we're making, but also recognize we have to double down on our commitments. And in many ways, the hard work is just beginning. We need to now sustain our progress. We need to show that we can institutionalize our initiatives. so that we're able to continue to show these results, reduce trauma, reduce violence for the long haul. And so in December 2020, when Mayor Scott won his election as the youngest mayor in Baltimore in a century, running on a platform of treating violence as a public health crisis, one of the first things he did as mayor was establish the agency that I now lead, the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. And with that, invested $50 million into prevention and intervention strategies. And so we also released the city's first ever comprehensive public safety plan that went beyond the role of policing. That plan is one that came out in July 2021, and like I said, we're a little more than 3 years now into that implementation. And so where we started as an administration, you can see here on the slide, we had a few initiatives, a few programs in this realm. To date, we have significantly grown this landscape to really span the whole host of prevention, intervention, rehabilitation, and reentry, and we're still working to grow that today. And so a lot of the work that we're doing, be it neighborhood stabilization work, flooding neighborhoods with resources and supports in the immediate aftermath of mass shootings or other traumatic events, providing secondary victims of crime services where they weren't able to get them before, working with people who are returning home to Baltimore City after serving their time in prison to do safe return planning and make sure they're ready to come home. All of these things have a role in public safety, and we know that these strategies collectively and the many grassroots organizations doing the work, we could not do it without. We're a city agency, we need that partnership at that level, but we're a key convener and we know collectively the totality of these strategies and trying a multitude of strategies, something that Baltimore City has not tried before, is what we believe is really working today. So like I said, we know this is working. The group violence reduction strategy in 2024 was evaluated, and we saw that it was associated with 60 fewer shootings and homicides over an 18-month period. Without an increase in arrest, we saw a quarter of the violence decline in the Western District, our city's most violent district. And that's just one of our strategies. So layering on top of that, another initiative in our community violence intervention ecosystem, Safe Streets, our credible messengers who are engaging in community outreach, engaging in mediation of violent incidents. Year to date, they have already mediated more than 1,000 incidents that could have resulted in violence. I want to give an example of one of those mediations just to showcase the power of this relational work. Our Safe Streets staff received a call from a resident who said that their cousin had something stolen from them, and the cousin was planning to retaliate against the person who stole from them. So they called Safe Streets and asked for assistance. Armed with nothing more than their community credibility and maybe an orange shirt, our Safe Streets workers immediately intervened in that situation, figuring out how to negotiate and determine a solution that was agreeable to both sides. And so in this case, our Safe Streets workers were able to broker an agreement where the items that were stolen were given back to that individual in exchange for them not agreeing to not carry out their plans to retaliate. And so in that instance, I think it's really important. It may sound like a mundane issue, but we know far too many people in Baltimore and other cities are losing their lives to conflicts that are otherwise small and petty. And it's important that we have individuals who can send that message and show that there is another way for the young people in that community, for the community as a whole to grow from. And the research also bears out that Safe Streets has been associated with significant decreases in homicides and non-fatal shootings where they operate. Just a month ago, I was standing with a few of our Safe Streets sites. We had 3 sites that went more than a year without any homicides in their zones. Since we took this picture, we've had 2 more sites achieve that same accomplishment. I think the secret sauce in our strategies is this homegrown leadership. We have individuals who are of and from the communities that they're now serving. They may have in the past contributed to the problem, they may have served time themselves, but now are on the front lines really brokering and leading for peace and violence reduction. I also want to lift up another homegrown leader who, without this work, would not be possible. Mayor Brandon Scott, his vision, his openness, his belief in this work. As the mayor, he sets the agenda. He is the one that controls what we're able to invest in and what we're able to try. And it's through his leadership and vision that we're able to truly do the work that we're doing, which is changing the culture of public safety. Just one word in conclusion, as we think about homegrown leadership and some of the reflections I had as I was putting together this talk. It's important that we lift up local solutions to local problems. And it's important that we get inspiration from outside and elsewhere. And at the same time, we should be cognizant of how we adapt to the context that we're in, the city that we're in. I think for us, homegrown leaders are the ones who are oriented to the problem. They're the ones who are going to be there to carry out the work for the long haul. And for that, it's why it's so important that we invest and lift up that work. And so with that, I just want to say it's been the honor of my lifetime to contribute in a small way to this mission. And just want to thank you all so much for listening. Thank you.